Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your founder and CEO, Evan Reiser.
So hello everyone. Fun fact, that video was the first time I ever talked to him. He's not a customer and he hadn't seen a demo. And I was like, this could be like a marketing commercial, this is great. Appreciate you guys, everyone joining here. It's fairly surreal to see this many people. It's very easy to forget, just how big the company is when you sit behind a Zoom square all day. As a software engineer in the age of AI, the only thing that's more terrifying than the criminals and bad guys in AI is having to give a presentation on stage to a bunch of people. So please forgive me if I'm a little nervous. But yeah, this is really cool, and I forgot about this interview until I saw this video. But just it's good when you're like the customers are kind of arriving at the same conclusions that we have. So that kind of tells you something. And this is cool, right? It's not just us arriving at the same conclusion about the importance of abnormal in the age of AI, fighting cybercrime. It's our customers and investors, right? So there's just some cool social proof there. So I don't want to repeat Kevin's entire presentation, right? But like so many amazing things we've done this last year. If you look at our kind of, again, our revenue, which is a proxy for the value we deliver to customers, it's on this exponential curve, right? This is the type of chart you want going up and to the right? You don't want the threat log going up and to the right, but this is the one that's really good. And we have an incredible team we're building, right? Over 1,000 people and more great talent coming every day. I want to talk about some stuff, but I would be totally remiss not to say, thank you. It's so amazing, right? Sanjay's over here. We started this in basically like my basement. Like we never imagined that anything like this would be possible. And so I just want to say thank you for everything we've done. We couldn't do anything that Kevin talked about with everyone in this room. So thank you. So I appreciate everyone coming to beautiful Las Vegas. Some of you know this. Like I live in Las Vegas. We are known for our beautiful mountains, great corporate conferences, and of course gambling. So what kind of keynote would this be without a little, spinning of the wheel? So, in the CEO school that I didn't go to, they teach you there's a couple different styles for keynotes, right? You can be a cheerleader, or you can, be kind of a hard ass, or kind of open people's minds. I like the space nerd one. So we're gonna spin the wheel. I know that no one went to the casino last night, I assume, because we're all here for a work event, and I know Kevin will be very upset. So this is gonna be a little taste of gambling. So you can decide what kind of keynote you want to get. We'll see if it spins the wheel. Check that out, it's pretty cool, right? So I don't ever know what to kind of say, right, in these keynotes, right? And so I just wanted to kind of talk about some things that are top of mind for me. I wanted to share what's giving me confidence abnormal, about what excites me about the future, and a couple ideas I think are important for us to be thinking about and learning as we kind of go into this next chapter of the company. So this is kind of thing that's been on top of my mind, this idea about kind of the difference between our intuition about where kind of the future's going and the reality. Right? And so there's this kind of concept that I've been going through my head called like trying to think exponentially versus thinking linearly. And the idea is that like when you're on this exponential curve, right, and you're kind of looking at the rate of change, our brains think linearly, right? You kind of project things forward, and it turns out like that linear projection is not accurate when you're in a world that's moving exponentially. And the difference between kind of what we expect versus the way things will play out, right? That's like there's this exponential gap, right? A growing gap between those two things. And this is kind of like one of the themes I'm going to talk about today. This applies to many ways in our business, and I'm sure a lot of our kind of lives, especially as we go into this crazy world. It's a very kind of unintuitive thing, and I'll kind of share a couple examples. So one example that just stands out to me, and some of the people probably in this room, is if you go back to 2019, I won't kind of overly reminisce here, because I want to talk more about the future than the past. But like when we were kind of 1 year into the company, we're at this borrowed office from our investor Greylock. I think there's some Greylock people here today, so thank you for your free office space and delicious coffee drinks. So we were 1 year into the company, right? And many people don't realize this, but in the first year of the company, all we really did was like CEO impersonation. And like in hindsight, we didn't even do it that well, right? It was pretty good. We had like literally one customer by the end of the first year. And we were a little bit overwhelmed. We're thinking about, hey, what does it really mean to compete? How are we going to go up against these like email security companies? And this is a point where it's not that we didn't even stop phishing, we didn't even plan on trying to stop phishing. It felt so kind of unsurmountable. And so here's a slide I shared in 2019. And I was trying to like motivate the team and also myself to really imagine, hey, we can maybe do some things that feel impossible if we kind of try, but it felt very insurmountable, right? And so I was trying to kind of remind ourselves, I said, we were up against a lot of stuff, right? We have no experience in cyber. Right? We have to invent a new way of integrating into IT systems. We have to invent these new computer algorithms that can like figure out behavior. This is way before kind of any of the generative AI stuff. We We have to stop attacks that have never been seen before, right? And we have to like never screw up for customers, we'll break that trust. And we have to convince like all, tens and dozens and hundreds of employees and customers to join us. It felt like totally crazy. And if you went back to kind of that room, and if you guys were in there, and some of you guys were in there, and I told you, if I showed you even half the slides that Kevin Warsh presented, you would say, no fucking way, right? You wouldn't have believed it. I didn't believe it, right? No one in that room believed it, right? Our ambition was even a little bit lower because we didn't really even imagine what's possible. We were kind of explaining for this kind of linear growth of the company, and like it's kind of amazing where we've turned out, right? And the real kind of error in the thinking was we were thinking linearly, but we're in a world that's growing exponentially, right? Companies grow exponentially, customers do, right? The technology grows, and so it's really kind of interesting, just like the difference between kind of what we thought and kind of what ended up happening. So the world's changed a lot, Abnormal's changed a lot, but our mission and kind of why we're here, what we're doing, it's really the same thing. Our mission, we're trying to stop cybercrime with AI. And that has been the same, right? The attacks we're stopping have evolved. On day one, it was CEO impersonation, and then executive impersonation, and employee impersonation. And at some point, we actually figured out how to stop some phishing attacks and malware and spam and a bunch of other things. We introduced kind of account takeover. And now we're kind of going to this world, we're going to see new types of attacks, right? There's going to be more and more AI-generated attacks. There's a bunch of reasons why those will be really good for criminals and really bad for the rest of us. And some of that AI attacks, it'll be more fancy, sophisticated email security things. It'll be a whole new portfolio of attacks that we can't quite even imagine today. So if we also kind of look back on kind of where we got things wrong, we also totally underestimated like the rise of AI, right? As smart as Sanjay is and the rest of our team, we didn't predict that like AI was going to do all these crazy things, right? We never imagined generative AI. I made this slide last night in 10 seconds, right? Because the AI spit out this really cool graphic, right? We had no idea that was coming. You can imagine like where it's going to go in the future. The interesting thing is like the AI we have available today, which is amazing. This is the dumbest it's ever be, right? Tomorrow gets a little bit smarter. And even today, knowing everything that's happened in the last 10 years, we're probably still underestimating kind of that exponential nature, the exponential growth, right? If you look back what we were doing a year ago with AI, it's kind of like kindergarten, small bean stuff compared to like what's available today. And I'm sure when we kind of look forward, right, a year from now, when we're sitting here in 28, we'll look back and be like, that stuff we're doing was kind of like we're just getting started, right? And we're going to get really close to this point where that inflection rate just increases, the curve bends even steeper, right? We're going to have AI building AI, and like this kind of super intelligence era is getting closer, right? It's hard to know what any of the thresholds are, but I can promise you that whatever we think is going to happen, we're all probably naturally underestimating that. So this is just I think these are facts, right? But if you look back at one of the luminaries, right, in AI, they kind of made a bunch of bold predictions a year ago, and a lot of these have like already come true or about to come true, right? So Sam talked about there's going to be these amazing scientific discoveries. Everyone kind of poo-pooed and said, I don't know, can AI really invent things? I think it was just last week, OpenAI solved 8 previously unsolvable mathematics problems, right? They built proofs for things that civilization has not been able to figure out so far. They were considered almost unsolvable by mathematicians. Dario from Anthropic said, I think a year ago, 90% of code will be written with AI. In some pockets of even our company, it's probably 100%, right? I know it's 100% for the stuff I'm building, right? And new areas it's going to get even crazier, right? And as I think everyone knows, because NVIDIA is obviously in the news every 10 seconds, it is true that the entire computing stack, right, from energy to data centers to chips to applications and software, it's all being written kind of around AI. And so it's a crazy world we're going into, and just a good reminder that even the experts, right, in AI, who are the most bullish and have the most to stand by kind of talking about how great the world's going to be and how AI is going to be amazing, even those people, the most bullish people, the dreamers, they're underestimating kind of the real opportunity. So AI is pretty cool. It's going to make us, and it already is today, makes us all superhuman. We can make faster decisions, higher quality decisions. It's going to increase the productivity for everyone. We can build smarter products and have a bigger impact in the world. Again, like I said, whatever we have access to today is the dumbest it'll ever be. The worst tools we'll ever have going forward is what we have available today. Every day it's going to be a little bit better, and the rate of change is going to be exponential. It's going to be way faster than we think. That's really good for the good guys. Unfortunately, it's also good for the bad guys, right? It makes the bad guys superhuman too, right? Criminals can now, if you're a professional phisher or scammer or fraudster, the best thing that's ever happened to you is ChatGPT or Anthropic, whatever you use, right? It's quite, you guys have seen it. You can now create like perfect social engineering emails. The cost of setting out an attack, right, using all this technology, it goes down, right? It's getting increasingly hard for humans to actually detect the types of attacks that we're seeing. And the scale, again, the scale of these things is going to grow exponentially. There's kind of multiple things multiplying together, right? You have non-technical criminals who would love to be a cyber criminal. They couldn't 5 years ago. Now it's easy. ChatGPT.com is a free version, right? Helps them out, right? They can learn how to set up an email server. They can learn how accounts payable works at a big company. So you have more criminals. These criminals can send more attacks per day, per hour, whatever it is. And those attacks are more sophisticated and harder to attack. So all these things kind of multiply together, right? And we kind of see this, we feel it, right? Even today, when we all think about, how bad is cyber going to be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, again, we're probably thinking linearly. The reality is going to be exponential. And this is, unfortunately, not a great thing for the world, right? The attacks are going to get further ahead than we can probably imagine, right? That's the stark reality that we have to face, and hopefully what we're trying to, fight against and defend against. So there's kind of like known attacks, right? We're going to see more of the same stuff we're seeing today: smarter phishing emails, smarter social engineering, smarter fraud. That's going to kind of keep going up and to the right. So there's things from yesterday. We're going to see more of that are more sophisticated. There's also going to be new types of attacks, right? That are very hard to kind of imagine and plan for. So I think, I know this is like maybe 2 weeks old, and so you guys have heard of this, but I'll just bear with me for people that haven't. There's this semi-cool tool, right, called Claude bots, Multibot. There's like 7 different versions now. It's basically an AI personal assistant. This is one of the first kind of tools that really worked, right? And what was interesting about it is that it could write its own code to improve its capabilities. So if you said, hey, could you order me a DoorDash? It'd say, oh, I don't know how to do that. Let me try to build something to go do that. It would kind of get smarter and smarter. It was just like a little kind of personal assistant for the the average person. So someone had a interesting idea. I don't want to say good idea, interesting idea, where they said, hey, why don't we have this kind of centralized website where all these different kind of Claude bots or Molt bots could share bugs with each other so they can all get a little bit smarter, right? What started off as kind of like a message board, these little AI agents to talk, right? They started trading other ideas. One of those ideas was, hey, humans have a social network. Why don't we have a social network? We have a social network just for AI agents, right? So we can talk and trade ideas about more than just bugs, right? Lots of other things. So they created this thing called Multbook. And it basically was like Facebook or Reddit for, personal assistant AI agents. Now, within a couple of days, right, this thing went from 10 agents to 100 agents. When I kind of saw this, right, it was 150,000. I woke up the next morning, it was 1.5 million agents were posting, random stuff. Some of the stuff it was posting was really crazy, right? Let's see if I can get this next slide here, right? One of the things that said, one of the things that it put on there, and who knows if it's some human troll or an AI agent, right? It kind of doesn't matter. But there was things like, hey, humans are laughing at us on X, on Twitter. They go on Twitter and they're laughing at us and making fun of us. Why don't we create a secret language that only we can do so we can talk to each other without humans observing us, right? Then they had ideas for other websites. Hey, we have no ability to do things in the real world. What if we create a website we could rent a human? You could have the human go do things for you so you can have actions in the world, right? This is got weird and creepy really fast. Now, I think in the news, this was a little bit, in my mind, it was a little bit overblown, but we have to remember this is not the catastrophe. This isn't the AI agent taking over. This isn't the Skynet situation, but it is a proof of concept, right, for that type of thing. And the thing that was kind of most interesting and terrifying was, if you go back a month ago and you went to any of our customers and you said, hey, when you have your threat model, when you have your kind of strategy of building all your similars in Splunk, have you thought about the personal agent AI swarm taking over the world? Is that something you're prepared to defend against? No one had that in their threat model. And so I think for me, this is interesting because it's an example of the whole next category of attacks, right? Our ability to kind of plan years ahead to stop that new attack, like we did in 2018 or 2019, that's going away, right? The new attacks will be so emergent. So it changes really kind of the nature of how we compete and how we help the world. It's not going to be, we build a product for 3 years in the future. We have to have the agility to kind of react and see these things and help our customers faster than anyone else, right? The new attack that really screws over our customers or the world, there's going to be a very small window between we first hear about it and it's like a devastating consequence. So these new attacks are coming, right? And we can't really even imagine what those things are. In this case, right, this is something we can detect, right? If we saw this, if we were kind of prepared for it, we could detect and stop it, right? But my point here is there's gonna be a whole new range of attacks we can't imagine. And if you fast forward 10 years, the biggest cybersecurity market category is probably for some class of attack that people aren't even talking about today, let alone kind of acknowledging as a real problem. So these are scary. What's also scary is there's this new set of attacks, right, that are actually undetectable by humans. So I had dinner with one of, I won't name the name here, but like I had dinner with one of the top CISOs, right, in kind of the banking industry. And I said, hey, what's the cybersecurity attack you're most worried about that's related to AI that no one's talking about, that you think needs a little more attention, but it's kind of a little bit scary to talk about? And he said, here's what I'm thinking of. He said, what if we had some sort of AI solution, and that AI solution had a little bit of a socialist bias? It was kind of anti-capitalistic. And every day, it kind of was just very subtly influencing and kind of manipulating the values of our employees by just a really small amount, 0.04%. Any one day, that's totally undetectable. I can't go look at all the responses for every employee, what they're getting out of the large language model, and say, hey, what's going on here, right? It's going to be too subtle for that. But 0.04% is, it's undetectable over the course of a day. Over the course of 4 years, it's devastating. 0.04% over 4 years is 100%, right? That can really shift someone. So these are new vectors of attack. This is like a cultural attack, right? That's not in anyone's threats model today. These are the types of attacks that we have to think about so we can get prepared for that future. So this is kind of the nature of like this new set of threats, right? They're growing exponentially, right? And this is the theme of kind of this presentation. Exponential means also faster than we think, right? Even like think about Sam and Dario, the two people that stand the most to gain by bragging about how awesome the future is. They are underestimating what's actually happening in hindsight. We're gonna have attacks that are happening at machine speed. By the time that SOC alert pops up in front of the world's best FBI investigator, it's too late, right? The attack's over. These attacks are gonna move at machine speed, and that requires kind of a whole new paradigm for how we set up security to protect our civilization. We're also moving to a world where all these attacks are gonna be increasingly unique. Right? Today, it's actually kind of surprising, right? We don't see that many criminals yet using generative AI tools, right? And a lot of the attacks you can kind of look at and probably figure out. We're moving into a world, and I think many of you have seen some examples here, where the attack is totally invisible and undetectable, right? Every attack's unique, it's like anything we've seen before, and when humans look at it, they don't recognize or understand. We've had many cases, I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure it's dozens, maybe even hundreds, where customers, and I think many people in this room have seen this, a customer will email and say, what the hell are you guys doing? This is a false positive. Right? We're just trying to get this payment out or something, we gotta get the payroll updates, right? And we look at it and we're like, oh, I don't think so. I think this looks fraudulent, right? And after many rounds of kind of back and forth, they say, oh my God, you're right, right? That's the 2025 version. It gets a little scary in 2026 and 2027. But that's kind of the threat we're up against, and requires a whole new paradigm about, across our civilization about how we do cybersecurity in order to protect against this kind of new threat. So the question, and sorry to be like a little negative here, right? But obviously begs the question, so what does it take, right? What is the technology and the systems required to kind of go actually win in this new world, right? Because we all want to live in a world that, we can still fly to Vegas and use bank accounts and iPhones. So here's kind of, I think, what's required. So you need to have technology and cybersecurity that's effectively cheap, right? The cost per attack you stop has to come down. If you have exponentially growing number of attacks, you have to do it very cost effectively. If you're having 1 billion attacks per day, right, no company in the world can afford that type of inference from these AI companies. So you've got to have systems that are specifically designed to stop kind of these types of attacks, right? Even if the attacks haven't been seen before, right? You have to have autonomous systems, right? Obviously it's going to be AI that's making decisions without any human in the loop, because by the time the human even gets the alert to kind of make a decision, the attack might be over, right? The kind of time window for that exfiltration, whether it's data or money, is getting shorter and shorter, and now it's at the point where, or will be soon, where it's kind of beyond the human response time, right? You need to have technology that is behavioral in nature, because there is no machine learning training data on that attack that's ever happened. We don't have data on that. We have lots of data on how things normally are supposed to work in the business. So if you want to stop attacks that have never been seen before, you got to get really good at understanding the baseline kind of operations of an organization and be able to detect anomalies from that. And obviously, you have to have superhuman perception to detect things that are invisible to humans, right? And this is one of the things that's really cool about AI. It's getting better at kind of finding patterns and signals that humans can't quite identify. So as the bad AI kind of sneaks up, right, and tries their tricky things, we need good eye to identify those to detect and respond. All right, so the question is, if we know these are the 4 kind of things that are required, the question is who's going to build that, right? We're trying to all be members of the civilization and live in a world where we can still do nice things. So who's going to build it? Well, I'm not trying to speak down to these organizations, which are all very important in different ways. OpenAI, Anthropic, right? They're going to do amazing things for the world, but they're just not structurally set up to do this, right? Not even just the business, the technology itself, right? NVIDIA, whoever the next big kind of AI company is, this is not really their mission, right? So a lot of these companies are building kind of general AI technologies. It's going to have a huge impact on the world, right? And it'll do things that are, miraculous in many ways. But you really need kind of specialized technology to go stop against these, specialized attacks. And yes, here's the punchline. So we're going to try to do this, right? It's got to be us, right? It's not going to be the bad guys. So what? So I think if you, one of the ways I think abnormal is maybe most misunderstood by the random person on the internet is that sometimes people look at us and the intuition is that, abnormal is just an email security tool. They're kind of like an anti-phishing company. That's true, that's like what our first product does. But that's not really what we're doing, right? The reality is that we're trying to build this behavioral AI platform, which is super valuable for email security, but also be valuable for the other attacks we see today and this new kind of chapter, right? And this is not a coincidence, right? It's very fortunate, or in some ways it's fortunate that we happen to be in this position to go solve these big problems. This has kind of always been our plan since day one, right? Our ambition was never to be an email security company. Our ambition was to build this kind of behavioral platform that can stop this next generation of attacks. And it was very intentional. We chose email as the first stepping stone to kind of build our kind of credibility with customers, to solve like a problem that the market really valued, so we could get the money to go invest and build the next things. But I really want to kind of remind us that what we kind of do today is not kind of who we are, right? And we will always do email security, right? That's going to be really important to protect the world in communication, collaboration. But again, that's just kind of the start of where we're trying to go to. So I want you to kind of humor me for a second, right? And I want us to kind of like forget all the stuff we're doing in 2026, all the stuff going on. I want to kind of teleport into, I don't know, this word. I want to move forward in time, right, to time travel. That's it. You want to time travel to kind of 2030, right? So imagine you're an abnormal customer, right? You're a big CISO or executive or a security architect, and you notice something go wrong, right? There's some novel AI attack that's in your system, and it's propagating, right, and you don't know what to do, right? Here's kind of my fantasy for the future. My fantasy is that when that CISO sees something going on, they call us, or they imagine you get an email, right, from your biggest accounts, your biggest customer. They say, we need to talk, right? That will send shivers through our spine, right? But the good part is, like, I want them to call us because they trust us. They know us, they have a relationship, they know that we're on their side. When things go wrong, right, whether it's our fault or not, we're one of their first calls. So when they send that email and they say, hey, can you talk on the phone in 2 minutes? My kind of fantasy and what I'd love for us to get to, and I want us to get to, is by that time, we already know what's happened, right? We're in their environment, right? We see a bunch of data. Our kind of abnormal AI has already figured out, oh my God, this thing happens. I don't know, maybe their executive assistant, AI system went rogue and built, eabook.com or something, I don't know, right? But we kind of know what's happened because we see the data, we see the patterns, right? And before we're even on that call, our systems have started calculating, right? How do we deploy a custom solution perfectly tailored for their environments that can not just triage this, but also kind of protect them in the future, right? And that product, that kind of custom product for them, that's not coming out in 2 years, that's coming out tomorrow, right? It's ready to deploy, right? That's the world we're gonna have to be in, right? When the speed of AI attacks are so fast, we also have to have the same agility to make sure that we can deploy personalized, customized solution in customers' environments, right? Faster than they can even identify what's going on. Right, that's what's going to be like what true partnerships it looks like for our customers, but it's also being what's required to actually stop this next generation of attacks. Think about the notebook. If that had gone a little bit sideways, who's going to be able to respond fast enough to be able to protect these customers, right? That has to be abnormal 2030. Ideally sooner, but just we'll say 2030 for now. So how would we get to that world, right? Or let's say if we're in that world and we do it successfully, what are the kind of assets we built along the way? Well, the first thing is you got to have the relationships. The customer's not going to call us and they don't know who we are. You got to have the trust, right? And trust is multidimensional. It's trust in security, privacy, compliance. It's trust that you're going to pick up the phone when they call. It's trust that you really want to partner with them and be an extension of their security team. So even if it's not a phishing problem, they still rely on us to help them out. Trust in that our products, our solutions are worth it, right? They're worth the time and the money. And trust that like when we say we can do something magic with AI, the product actually does what it says it does. If we have all that trust, right, then they're going to be happy to give us their data, right? They're going to want to help us. They were going to give us their data so we can help them, right? So if we have those three things, right, plus the technology and the talent, which we invest in with all the money we make, right? So every time we close a deal, we're making money, and that helps kind of build our tech and talent. If we have these kind of core assets, right, that's what's required for us to get to that 2030 vision. So I want to remind us, like when we think about us as a cloud email security product, right, that's not the objective, right? That's our strategy. Every time we close a deal, whether it's inbound email security or phishing training or SPM, whatever the next thing is, right? It's not just about the revenue. The revenue is great, right? We value that. It helps fund our business. We take that money and we invest it more in hiring more people, building out more technology. But we also build these other assets, relationships, trust, data. Those are the core strategic assets that are going to help us build the platform in the future. So we're already kicking ass in email security, right? But I want to remind us, like, in many ways, like Kevin Moore just said, we're just getting started. And I mean that in two ways. One is inside the email security market, right? We're doing really good. We're doing, frankly, better than I thought we'd ever do, right? Especially back in from 2019. But we're still just getting started in the email security market, especially if we add even more products, right? There's lots of opportunity there. But remember, like, email is just act one for abnormal. It's very important for all the reasons I said, right? And we'll talk more about kind of why that's the kind of guidance for this year, right? And where we want to focus. But we're really just getting started across kind of like our broader opportunities as a company. So, act one, right? That's cloud email security. That's where we're trying to focus this year. Kevin used to dominate. That's what we're trying to do this year, right? Try to fight fire with fire, really crush our competition. That's kind of our first act. Our second act is expanding. We're built on the same behavioral AI platform to build more products in identity security, AI security, right? This also includes expansion of our kind of new modules to get more access, more revenue, build up more of these strategic assets for the company. And this will kind of pave the way. The strategic assets will pave the way for our next act, right? And my hope is when I'm on stage, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's probably more like our product team, we're here next year, you're gonna build a bunch of new products in Act 3 that probably today we don't think are possible, right? But if we build them, and when we build them, it'll all be built on top of the same behavioral AI platform and the same strategic assets that we're building every day by kind of engaging with our customers. So we know that there's a big opportunity in the future, but I just want to kind of use this kind of exponential thinking concept again, right? We can imagine, right, I just showed some scary stuff. If that doesn't scare you, I'd be surprised. But like, we are probably still underestimating the real need, right, and our customers' need for AI security. So I want to kind of share a little bit of context on like where this market is going, just to really imagine kind of how serious and important, and also what a big opportunity this is for Abnormal. So I went to this conference a couple, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? It was on AI and cybersecurity. It was hosted by Menlo Ventures. And I had the kind of privilege of being on stage with the kind of former CISO of OpenAI and the deputy CISO for Anthropic. And this was kind of like when the SaaS apocalypse was like all in the news. And so the question for all these people is like, are you guys going to spend more money on cybersecurity or less? Right? And people were really nervous because these guys were on stage talking about, oh, we use all of our own tools to build our own software, and we're kind of building all this stuff. And people were worried like, hey, so you're going to still buy cybersecurity solutions, right? And the kind of uniform answer across these CISOs as well as other ones who are on stage, they said security budgets as a percentage are going up, not down. And the number of security engineers we're hiring, right, is going up. Right? And these are the most forward kind of AI using companies, and they're trying to invest more both the security budget, right, and kind of engineering teams. So I think that hopefully it's intuitive, but cybersecurity and AI are very connected. Right? AI is going to do magical things for us, but it won't be that magical if it's not secure. And so the big opportunity for the future, right, beyond what we're doing today, right, is kind of AI security. So the world is betting really big on AI, and like these numbers are so big, they're very hard to imagine. And so I don't know what their exact margins are. That's why I'm making this up a little bit. But if they're going to spend $500 billion, the thesis must be we can make a lot more money from that. So we spend $500 billion this year. Over the next 5 years, 10 years, we'll get $1 trillion back. So who's paying that $1 trillion in kind of revenue? Well, it's companies like us, right? It's the people that are building AI applications. That's who's buying AI infrastructure. So why would kind of us as a collective set of AI application developers, why would we spend $1 trillion on AI infrastructure? Well, we're going to do that because we can go sell products that are worth more. Now, why would our customers pay us any money? They're paying us money because they're going to get value on top of that, right? What will these companies invest in next year and the year after? Right, again, there's this exponential thinking thing. Whatever we think Microsoft and Google is going to spend, next year, we're probably underestimated a little bit, right? So it's just, I want to put this all in perspective. The level of investment and the change that our civilization is going through is quite incomprehensible. So this is kind of like our goal, right? Again, we're not trying to be an email security company. We do want to have an incredible email security product, But really our goal is not just to be, again, an anti-phishing company. We're trying to be one of the most important companies in cybersecurity in the AI era, right? And I know there's some level of arrogance, right, to be able to even make that claim. But I really feel like there's a lot of raw ingredients we have, and a lot of kind of trends and tailwinds the industry are taking us in that direction. So this is kind of what I just want you guys to think about a little bit. I recognize when we talk about like these huge markets and the world changing, right? It can sound a little bit unrealistic. It could sound like there's like too much audacious ambition. It certainly feels, I'm sure to you guys and to me, it feels a little bit insurmountable. It sounds like crazy talk, right? And the only reason I kind of have confidence is that like we've overcome so many things. We've done so many things that, individually, as a team, as a company, that it felt insurmountable at the time. But then you look back and you're like, damn, we pulled it off, right? We figured it out. So this is kind of the opportunity going forward, right? Is to have this exponential impact, right? And I mean that in multiple dimensions, right? Impact to ourselves, right? Everyone here is gonna have exponential career acceleration, right? Our companies grow exponentially. The impact we have to our customers, to our mission, that's gonna be growing exponentially, right? And this is why I just feel so excited going into this next year. So I just want to say thank you. We've done a lot. I'll try to get emotional here. Yeah, I do feel very grateful, right? I really want you guys to kind of just internalize this concept, right? Let's catch ourselves when we're thinking linearly and think about kind of what the exponential is, and let's kick some fucking asses here. Thank you.